Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Student Athlete with Opinion. Today, we are going to be talking about the issue of guns. Now, as you all probably already know, the issue of guns has endured a lot of debate over the centuries, and there have been several attempts to get higher restrictions and also outlawing them entirely. Me, I don't think they should be outlawed entirely, but I believe that we need a lot more restrictions on them, and we're going to go over that today. So, there's a lot of different evidence and different justifications that people will use to argue for unlimited gun rights. The most famous of these being the Second Amendment, a well regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, I get that because that's in our Constitution, so I see why you use that. But there's a lot of problems with that. Problems that the fathers didn't foresee at the time. As we all know, things change. This was 250 years ago, bro. There's been a lot of change in that 250 years. And some of the reasonings for these rights aren't really relevant anymore. The fathers had reasons for unlimited gun rights at that time, which is something that we're going to go over right now. Life in 18th century America was very difficult and very dangerous, especially on the frontier. In the frontier, you basically needed a gun for your survival because a lot of the frontiersmen were hunters. That's how they survived, was off the meat. You need a gun for that. I mean, I guess you could use a bow and arrow, but that's not nearly as effective. You also had the constant Indian wars. Some of the Indians were friendly, don't get me wrong there. But a lot of them did not take too kindly to the frontiersmen moving in. And if you didn't have a gun, you were not going to go well against the experienced bowmen of the Indians. In addition to Indian raids, there are also raids from wild animals like wolves and bears. They did not respond well to man taking over and putting farms in their land. They would go in and destroy their livestock and sometimes attack whole villages and maul people to death. These were all reasons that you needed to have a gun back in the 18th century. Today, those aren't very real problems anymore. Most people, if they want a steak, they'll go to the store and buy one. Okay, I don't need to go shoot me an elk to get my dinner. Indians, like, we all know what the deal is there. There's no war parties anymore, no more John Wayne, Ride of the Comancheros. And, for people who farm, animals are still a nuisance, bears damaging livestock. So there are still some reasons why you need guns, but not nearly as many as in the time of our founding fathers. One of the biggest reasons that our fathers gave us gun rights, and a reason that people still use for gun justification today, was the fear of a dictatorship. Our fathers feared that if civilians were not allowed to have guns, then the military could set up a dictatorship in the government and that we could not do anything to stop that. And that fear still exists today, which is why a lot of people hold fast to their guns. You get people saying, they can have my gun when they pry from my cold dead fingers. Okay, I understand where that's coming from, bro. But here's the thing. In the 18th century, the guns that civilians were allowed to have weren't really that different from military guns. They were basically about the same. There were very few civilians that had cannons and whatnot, but the basic firearms were pretty similar. So, in the event of a military dictatorship or revolt, which we clearly saw because the revolution started with a bunch of civilians having guns, and they were able to put up a semi-decent fight. But here's the thing. That's not really the case today. The guns that our military has is crazy compared to civilian guns. Like, there have been some semi-automatics that civilians are allowed to have, but those are crazy expensive, bro. And two, there are extreme investigations that go into allowing you to purchase this. And more importantly, there's a law that prohibits us civilians from buying automatics that were developed after 1984. So that means that all the new guns that the military has been developing after 1984, me and you have no access to, brother. We're just stuck with the old things. And gun technology changes fast. The guns that the military equipped with are light years superior to anything we have. And the thing that we find out, and we saw this at the Battle of Lexington and Concord, even though they had guns that were basically the same as what the British were using, there's just so much more discipline in the military. Military mind is disciplined, and he knows how to handle the weapons. He knows how to function as a unit, how to win a war. A rebel, like if a person like me or you were to go into uprising, we're just wild men with a gun. Even if we had a machine gun, there's no discipline. A single unit of special forces would be able to wipe out like 1,000 of us in just a short period of time. And if you don't believe me, take a look at drones. I mean, they're sending flying bombs. The most advanced that civilians are allowed to have is a semi-automatic rifle. Now, some of those are actually pretty darn good and might throw a little bit of a headache to an inadequately armed soldier. But if we had to go head-to-head against a military dictatorship, like, I'm being honest with you, if the government wants to, they could have us under military dictatorship right now. The weapons we have would at most be a nuisance, because they could send just a few units of special forces like SEALs, PJs, Green Berets, you name them, any one of them could take out the majority of us in a matter of days. And if you don't believe me about them, how much do you think your gun's going to do against a Shahed missile? Or an M49 Reaper drone? You're not going to do much, buddy. We just live in a false sense of security because we think we have guns. We think we're secure and that our government cannot take over. That is so far from the truth. So, by this point, a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, buddy, you've shown me a lot of reasons why we don't necessarily need guns, but so what? Why do we need restrictions even if we don't need guns? I got a question for you. What is a gun designed to do? It's designed to kill. And they do. In the US, there are approximately 44 to 46,000 gun deaths annually. That's 46,000 annually. To give you some comparison, England, which has much stricter gun laws, has roughly 100 to 150 gun deaths per year. Now, okay, they have a much smaller population, but to give you a ratio, American deaths is about 12.8 to 13.3 deaths per 100,000, whereas England, it's about 0.04 to 0.25. There's a problem. About 65%, 60 to 65% of these gun deaths are from suicides. Now, here you're probably thinking, okay, if it's suicides, these people are going to do it whether we have guns or not. I'm not going to disagree with you there. A lot of these people are still going to commit suicide because there are many ways you can do suicides. But the thing there is, guns are much faster and much more definite. A lot of the ways people will commit suicide is by taking pills. And if they realize their mistake and they get help immediately, it's possible to save them. You put a bullet through your brain and you're done. There's no time for, oh no, this is a mistake. That's it. You're done. So no, putting gun restrictions wouldn't solve that problem entirely, but it would help decrease it. The next leading cause of gun deaths in America is homicides. Homicides account for roughly 35% of gun deaths in the US. You go onto the news and you are always hearing about school shootings. It seems for a while, it seemed like every day I went on the news, there was a new shooting, new people being killed. How often do you hear of mass homicides with a knife? How often do you hear of mass homicides with a club? You don't. 15 to 16,000 people a year are being killed by gun homicides. And a lot of these people are people that shouldn't have had guns to begin with. Because there are ways to tell if a person shouldn't have a gun or if they're possible that they're going to do this. The remaining 15% of gun deaths happen from police interventions or unintentional shootings. People are stupid. Let's just call it for what it is. There's a lot of stupid people who are pretty careless about their guns. I saw my grandpa he had a revolver hanging by a nail in his garage, as if it was just a garden rake or something. I'm like, dude, what the heck? This is a gun. This is something that can kill someone. And the bullets were just sitting on a shelf. They weren't secure. Anyone could get it and load that gun and do something. There's a lack of responsibility in the United States. A lot of people think that guns are toys. But they're not. They're designed to kill. And they are killing people. We need to take more responsibility for this right that we have been given. And it might mean placing more restrictions on this right. So, an important thing to note, a lot of people make a big deal about semi-automatic rifles and these assault weapons that people are allowed to have. But those only make a small fraction of gun deaths in America. Now, when they are used in homicides, the numbers are going to be twice as many as normal guns. But they're used very rare. About 75% of all gun deaths in America, including homicides, suicides, and accidental shootings, come from handguns. And I'll be honest, does the average civilian actually need a handgun? Because some of the few remaining reasons why people actually need guns is for farmers who deal with livestock. And you're not going to try to shoot a bear with a handgun. You're going to want a rifle or a shotgun. Very few gun deaths are occurring from those. I talked about earlier England, who has very strict gun laws, much fewer gun deaths, and stricter gun laws. Handguns are very rare in England. There are very few. Actually, I'm not sure, but I think they might have outlawed handguns entirely. You're allowed to use shotguns and rifles, which is something you actually need for hunting. Maybe we don't need to outlaw handguns entirely. We don't need to outlaw the idea of guns entirely to solve this problem. But we need to identify what is the leading cause of the deaths and try to eliminate factors. A lot of people who commit suicides with guns have depression, which can be pretty easily figured out. So this is just some of my suggestions of what we should do. Make them go through a full medical background check before they can purchase guns. Identify if they have depression, to what extent it is, and what they're likely to do with it. Because suicide is not the only thing that can happen from depression. A lot of people involved in homicides have histories of mental instability and cases of depression. I'm not saying just because you have depression, you shouldn't have a gun, because there are some people who have minor cases of depression that are workable with. But what we need to do is to identify who is going to be able to control the responsibility and the danger of owning a gun. Because gun rights, they're not just a right, they're a responsibility. Our founding fathers didn't give us the right to a toy. They gave us something that we could protect ourselves with. But we're using it not to protect ourselves, we're using it to kill each other. We've got to stop. Some rights might have to be sacrificed. Maybe we should outlaw handguns, because I don't see any real reason why the average person needs one. Again, I'm just spitballing here because this is just my personal opinion. I think you should prove that you have a reason why you actually need a gun. Like, farmers living near a lot of wild animals that want to damage their livestock. They've got a reason. Maybe you live in a really bad neighborhood. Like, I have, my sister lives in Chicago. They don't have guns because they live in a better part of Chicago that's relatively safe, but there's a lot of people that aren't safe in Chicago or New York City. And some of those people, I would justify having guns for self-defense. But they have to prove that they actually have a reason. Or at least that's what I'm suggesting. Right now, there's not really many restrictions on gun rights in America. Parents are giving their guns to kids who, like, guys, I'm a teenage kid. And I like things that make a big noise and like having fun with them. They're not going to be responsible with them. It's a toy, which we don't treat with respect. Because the power of a gun is something to be respected and to be feared. The right to own a gun is something to be respected and to be feared. So, at the end of all my jabbering and yabba flabba dabba, all of this video comes down to this point. I don't think guns should be open to everyone. I think they should be open to people who actually need them and can prove that they are going to be responsible and not misuse them. We have abused this right and not accepted the responsibility. And there are a lot of people who should be alive right now that aren't because of our abuse of this right. The time has come to make a change. Hey y'all, thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video. Hit like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. What do you think we should do about the issue of gun deaths? What do you think some of the restrictions should be, if any?